Hey everyone, welcome to the Wild and Uncut podcast brought to you by Ruger. I'm your host, Kristy Titus. Thank you for tuning in. The line is going hot, so let's go full send on this episode.
We have the pleasure of introducing Terry Vaughan, and you guys are in for a treat with Terry. He is a body language reader. Yeah, he is. You guys, we were standing there.
Within 5 minutes, he diagnosed me. Really was not good.
It was good. It was good. It was good. We're going off script here. He said, when you smile, the wrinkles right here, you smile, and it's a genuine smile. It means you're showing empathy to the person that you're talking to. So that's a good thing. You're empathetic, Kristy.
Yes. But because Terry is also a former British Royal Marine Commando, means he has an accent, ladies, okay? That's what this means. And I married a foreigner, so we all love accents. But he's on the elite branch of Her Majesty's Royal Navy, so he is kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal. In addition to audiences of circuit court judges and law enforcement, he has delivered a multitude of body language workshops and is also a past competitor on season 4 of History Channel's Top Shot. So let's start out the first one. Tell us about a situation you didn't see coming. Gosh, going for the jugular, ladies.
Yeah, like, hey, let's go straight for what's your weak point in life. Where have you failed? Let's hear about it. And what did you
The only time I've ever had a moment where maybe I was surprised by something that transpired, it was at a Bon Jovi concert. No judgment. I like Bon Jovi. I was there with my then fiancée, now wife, so, it survived. And a fight broke out a few rows down in front of us. And, of course, I saw the little commotion going on. But then the girl, who was apparently somehow related to the guy that was in the fight, came running over the seats up to me and said, "Help, my boyfriend's having a fight." What the hell do you want me to do about it? I'm just enjoying the concert. And she says, "You're security." I said, "Lady, you ran past 2 people with orange vests with literally security written on it to come to me." And the thing was, and I have to stand up for this, I was enjoying the concert. You knew I was enjoying it because... And it's funny because my missus goes, "I told you when you're out in public, you look like security." At which point, I learned to be a much smarter man and listen to my wife. So, you may be onto something if they're coming to me to break up fights, but that wasn't something I didn't necessarily see. Here's what I think. For most of us, particularly for you guys, right? You're leaders in your community. You're the guys that are going to be passing on the information that help inspire others to think about safety. It's a lifestyle. It's a choice to be aware. And once you hammer in these habits and it goes to your subconscious, it doesn't become work. When we first start with any new skill, it's work. It's like driving. When you first learn to drive, you're all fingers and thumbs, and everything had to be consciously decided. And now we can go from point A to point B and probably forget the drive in the middle because we're on autopilot. So it's making that choice to be alert and aware as get it into your subconscious as quickly as possible, but pass that information on to the people you teach. Make it a lifestyle choice. And I love coming at this from a point of empowerment, because most people think about personal safety and start to become a little nervous, apprehensive, anxiety creeps in, etc. When we're anxious or stressed, we're more likely to make sort of spontaneous bad choices. When we sort of respond, when we're calm, we think things through. We're like, okay, I got 3 options. Number 1's out. Number 2's not. Number 3. Welcome to the party. That's the one we're using. Mm-hmm. We're calm in our assessment, so that's what I'd say. But you need to see as much as you can. I'm sorry, I'm off.
So the next question, you're talking about being conscious, but when we're under pressure, we fall back on, like you said, level of training. Mm-hmm. So what are some things that we can do to practice attention to details so that we can build that attention span into our unconscious competence, so it's something that we're doing without even really having to
thinking about it? Yeah, that's a bloody good question. So one of the things that I advocate is you talk to yourself. I know. Some of you just got licensed to be as crazy as you like. The reason for talking to yourself is we talk out the things we want to be aware of and be alert to in our environment. And when we talk these things through, it starts to become a part of our story, part of our vernacular. And as we talk it through, so it in turn becomes a little bit of our subconscious. Now, this is a process. Let's say, for instance, you want to head out into the environment, and one of my pet peeves are people who don't scan their environment looking for dead zones. You want to look for areas of any area, any environment where you can't see around it, through it. That's a dead zone. That's where someone could hide and potentially do you harm. So instead of just saying, okay, I'm leaving the house today, I'm going to be situationally aware. Well, you're going to be situationally aware to what? Everything? Mm-hmm. No, you're not going to do it. I'm going to be situationally aware, and today's focus is dead zones. Now, if you want to take that one step further and get your subconscious uploading this information even quicker, use your first name. Where's Amy? Oh, I got you. So literally, here's a good example, because I sat at the table with her last night, and she's Nails. That's good, by the way, in case we don't know what Nails is. All right, toppers. You're like, she was who? Nails, toppers, gold, right? You use your first name. Amy. When I leave the house today, I'm dead zones. I'm all about dead zones. What are dead zones? Well, dead zones are literally any area I can't see around or through. I want to look for dead zones. And Amy, that's what I want you to do. Now, you're saying this out loud. Now, why are you doing that? Because just like when we see a long list of names, even if they're jumbled up, we can go, oh, there I am. Our subconscious is absolutely primed for that detail. It's been built in since childhood. What we're trying to do now is to get personal safety built in there alongside these, our name and everything else. And what it helps is it creates an illusion of focus for the subconscious, which follows the lead of the conscious mind. So anything we consciously and cognitively focus on becomes something of importance to the subconscious, and now we move it off our conscious plate to the subconscious, and it scans automatically. It's a process, it takes time, and we add elements in when we get to the point where we're like, wow, I just walked past that corner, I didn't even realize, but I scanned it as I went past. That's subconscious doing it for you, and it's off your conscious plate. And Amy, I used you because you were toppers last night. Thanks for answering all my questions, by the way.
I kind of did I modified the top one.
You kind of answered the second popular question, but maybe you didn't. Maybe there's more. Are the exercises to improve your awareness or surroundings?
A lot of times we go into any surroundings already distracted. Our bloody devices are the worst thing.
Oh, yeah.
So, I know, I do it. Your phone is your life. If that goes off, they build them to be a distraction to get you to go in. It creates, neurochemical responses where we're addicted to the phones. Well, first off, go into your environment, 3 nice big deep breaths. I'm heading out to do so-and-so today. My only goal, my one priority, personal safety. That's it. That's priority 1, 2, and 3. Everything else is secondary. The minute we do that, we turn everything sort of upside down a little bit, we take away the distractions, we're less likely, it's not going to go away completely, but we're less likely to be distracted by devices or things that don't pertain to being safe. So when you go into your environment, you do have a moment. It sounds a bit zen, but okay, I'm going out to do so-and-so. The only thing I'm worried about is my environment. If my phone goes off, I'm going to bloody ignore it. If I can't ignore it, I'm going to stop somewhere. I'm going to put my back to a wall or a stack of shelves or something that stops people getting to me from behind, and I'll do my phone action up here so my peripheral vision is still tuned in. It's the moment that's it, we've lost our entire surroundings. We could look up and a bloody army's arrived, and we'd go, oh, where'd you come from? When we're up here doing it, we can scan over the phone, we can look at our peripheral, and it's prioritizing your safety above everything else. And your students need to do it because they're the ones who haven't necessarily even thought about safety up till now, unless there's been a catalyst for it.
So talk about how we can individually beat bias. Not my question. Okay, this was a very popular question.
No,
is
fine,
there a way to do that?
To not be biased or
Yes.
be biased? Well,
to talk about beating bias. That's the question. We have
Okay,
a
beating
lot of
it.
Beating bias.
okay, what I like to do is to say, instead of trying to beat something down in ourselves, because I think we all have enough of that, why don't we try to promote a different type of bias? And that bias is exactly, and I just refer back to what I just said, is prioritizing for safety wherever you go. That, at least to some degree, minimizes the bad bias, the things that would distract us. It's going into any environment with no expectation that it's going to be how you left it or what you expect when you arrive. I don't ever arrive at my home when I go home expecting my home to still be there in the same state that I left it. I go clear the whole house. I just walk it. It's not a big song and dance. I just like to go make sure everything's where I expect it to be. But I go into the house going, my bias in this instance is that it will not be the same. It will not be as I expect it to be. And so many people don't even come home and check their property before entering. They just drive in. They expect it to be safe. That's just one easy example. I had a student who, she actually texted me after she kind of one of my classes, say she arrived home, got home that evening, she'd walked in, it was low light. She was about to go in through the front door and she said, some reason, something didn't feel right. So I backed away from the front door. She said, I just had a class on this that said, don't ever ignore that, assess. Look for a reason why. She took a back step to the road, walked up and down the pavement and realized one of the windows on the side of the house, the screen was bent out and the window had been jimmied up. She hadn't seen it consciously, but her subconscious, who's in it only for survival, had told her and was going, dude, we got a problem. But she hadn't seen it. She said, when I walked out to the side, I realized someone could be in my house. Wow. She was about to enter. She didn't go in because of that one thing. We want to provide big information, big things for our people, right? We want to give them the small stuff, to get in tune with their own instincts. Yeah. And that will help with any other bias that might distract, because we bias ourselves to be in tune and aware as much as possible. Nobody's perfect. That's why you test each other and your families and everything else, because more eyeballs look in, the better.
So watch your necks.
She's lethal with a pencil.
When you said all my troublemakers will meet in the back, I'm like, yeah, troublemakers unite. It was like 15 of us to clap. We'll meet you back there. All right, this is a popular one. Do you have any online training?
I actually am putting a course together right now.
Good.
Also inspired by COVID, there are sections of the course coming, and for those that would like to, if you, at this point, because I don't have the slide up, there's a barcode, a QR code that I will have at the back of the room for those who are interested. The first section, small part of it, is ready. Everything else is coming. It'll end up, my wife hates me for this, by the way, she's like, it's too long. It's going to end up being at least 15 to 20 hours. Okay, but I think there's no such thing, right? There's too much information when it comes to staying safe. And I grew up getting my ass kicked by my old man. So that my interest in personal safety started from that age because I didn't like bullies. That's what my dad was. And so I grew up with that, went through the military, which only made everything worse in terms of that stuff. So, and then taught it for 20 years as well. I'm getting old. But there's a lot of information that when I sat down to start writing stuff out, I'm like, there's oodles. So it's coming. TV Empowers, if you're watching online and you want to connect, please connect with me there, and I'll make sure to send you the link for those of you who are interested in getting that first part of the course. You just come up and see me at the end. I've got a little barcode QR thing you can scan, and you're off and running. But thanks for asking that question, because it is my passion.
Well, and I think people are really hungry to learn more, which kind of leads us really directly into our next question, which, what are some books people can read that would help them understand body language better?
Anything by the FBI profiler Joe Navarro is a really good place to start. Anything by some Brit called Terry Vaughan. He did something on decoding people, dads and daughters. But there's a number of, Paul Ekman's another good one. They're very science-based, but he is essentially the grandfather of most human behavior analysis. And his books are amazing if you can, if you're into that science-based version of it. But Joe Navarro and Paul Ekman are great places to start. There are a number of others out there. I think Pease is another one that's floating around in my noggin somewhere. Alan Pease, maybe. That's another great one. Honestly, when it comes to body language, I want you to ask yourself 3 questions, and I'm going to be covering this afternoon, but since you're all here now, whenever you meet someone for the first time, or even when you're talking and meeting with people you already know, ask yourself 3 questions. What do I expect to see? What do I not expect to see? And what's missing? Those 3 questions alone will make you more sensitive to the signals that will tell you more about that individual. The reason body language is powerful in the first place is because it's an inside track to personality type, emotions, attitude in the moment, intent. It's an outward reflection of what that person's thinking and feeling at any given moment. We stay anchored in each interaction by asking those 3 questions repeatedly. You'll be amazed. Start with those 3 alone. But yes, read as much as you can. I'm a voracious reader, and I like all that stuff, so those are 3 to start.
We have a few more minutes, but I do, since you're plugging everything, I want you to plug your social media. Let the ladies know your Facebook, your Instagram, your TikTok. And if you don't have TikTok, I think now he's worth it. He's worth getting it. You should download it just for him. So what are your handles for each of those? So
the easiest thing actually is to go to tvempowers.com, go to my website, TV Empowers, and all of the links are there. So it sort of saves trying to run through a whole bunch of social media handles, half of which I probably can't remember because my kids set it up for me. But yeah, TV Empowers, the social media is there, and please do connect. And it would be even better if you would say, hi, I was just at. Like, I will respond. Usually that's what I end up doing in airports when I'm traveling.
Where do you live? Do you live here?
Raleigh.
Raleigh.
Thank you very much. I have a home base in Raleigh at a range called On Point. Any of you guys heard of it? Okay, so connect with me, look me up, because I've got a dads and daughters class coming up.
That's fantastic.
So dads can bond with their teenage girls and teach them how to stay alive. Yeah,
very
coming
good.
up. And not kill. Well, I have a club for that too. We've actually just done a moms and daughters. Yeah. Well, listen, I take this stuff all over the country. Now the travel's on, please, because the more people that know and think about it differently, and I pride myself on making it as fun as possible so that it's not a stress-based class. It's learning, and you know you can do it. You're all here because you know you can do it. So now we're just adding to your toolbox. So anywhere I need to go, that's where I go.
I'm from Durham, and my whole family's in Raleigh, Durham, so my stalking of you just went to the next level.
I didn't know that. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
We're neighbors.
I know, and on your social media, I was following that your wife she's Southern. Is she from?
Oh, yeah, she's Southern. Yeah, she's from Winston-Salem in North Carolina.
So whose accent outcompetes the others? That's what I want to know. Like, who really wins this battle in your house?
It depends. After a TV show, I get all kinds of messed up. Like we watched a Scottish movie the other day, and I was like, hey, that's fantastic. That's great. Like, what are you doing? But she's Southern, and she has enough Southern left, but we've kind of merged it a little bit. And every once in a while, she'll lapse and say something very English. And I'll lapse and say something really country, like, y'all need to be over here doing this right now. And I'm like, oh, beat me with a stick. What happened?
Your kids.
Balanced. They don't have much of a southern accent. We've lived in a lot of different places. Okay, I'm just going to give you the story, right? So I met my wife in Aruba. Okay, it was my last day there. I was with the military, and we'd been in the jungle for a couple of months, and they let us out. And she came walking down the beach by herself. This is going back a few years, with a Walkman on. And there was like 13 lads all lined up. And I'm like, oh. Good afternoon. And I remember I was the only one that would get up and go talk to her. And I didn't, it was funny because I went up and said, hello mate, who are you listening to? That was it, that was the opening line. As soon as she heard it was English, she's always been an Anglophile and loved the royal family, so she's like, oh my God, do you know the Queen? I was like, well, of course. No embellishment here, know her well. In fact, just had tea. So we started talking, and eventually it turns out literally it was their first day in Aruba, and she was there with her family. So I said, let me walk you back. Which, when I tell you, we just talked for a few hours. That was it. It was great. I walked her back, dropped her off with her family, came back to the lads. They're like, you must have the best line ever. I remember telling them, I'm like, yeah, I said, hello, mate, how are you? They're, well, if you don't want to tell us what the line is, you don't have to be asked, do you? I'm like, have you ever just tried saying hello? They were like, no way that works. 3 kids later, it's been 30 years.
That's wonderful. That's an accomplishment. We are so excited to be bringing you our next speaker, Tyler Reagin. He is amazing. He's the founder and CEO of the Life-Giving Company. He is the author of The Life-Giving Leader and Leading Things That You Didn't Start. Now, Morgan, your pastor and Tyler have a connection.
So I studied a little bit of what he was doing, but I couldn't sleep last night, if I'm being honest. It was 2 a.m. And I was like, I'm gonna check out our speakers today. That was a bad idea, because they're super entertaining and very unique and motivating. So that caused me to be up until 3 a.m. But I don't know where Tyler is, but I did see that, here you are. I go to Crosspoint Church. So my pastor, Kevin, he's got a podcast also. It's the same title, right? The Life-Giving Company podcast. So I listened to that. I think you're on your 2nd season. I've stalked you, okay, I admit it. Thoroughly stalked.
Thank you, Internet.
So I am excited to hear what you have to say today.
So also, Tyler is was the president of Catalyst, which is a leadership development organization that really exists to unify and equip all leaders who love church through resources and experiential events. Everybody please join us in welcoming Tyler.
Biggest leadership mistake I've ever made. This is really hard for me to say because it's the DNA of who I am. I'm a trusting person from the beginning. This is who I am. I'm going to get hurt sometimes. And so there's been one specific leader that I trusted more than I should have. And the organization I led got really burned by that. But I say that going, but I'll not stop trusting people because of that. I don't want to be the kind of leader that doesn't trust people. I don't want anybody to work for me if I don't trust them. And anytime I'm around an organization where I can just sense a lack of trust, that is number one spot I dive into. Patrick Lencioni is a famous leadership content guy. He has a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And he starts, the highest, or the foundational dysfunction for a bad team is a lack of trust. And so, although we are going to get hurt by people, because people are people, if you build teams based on a fear, a scarcity mentality, a lack of trust mentality, it will not be a healthy team. And so building that foundation of trust is mission critical. So good question.
That's great. All right, we're going to the app.
Yeah, so online, one of the first questions is, so what do we do to recognize the difference between what we are and what others expect of us? And how do we as leaders take an objective look at ourselves?
It's a long question.
It's a two-parter.
So basically, how do we break that difference of what people are expecting of us? And look, we can't act like that. Sometimes what the boss says is what's going to happen, right? Like we've got to do. The difference is when you spend your days being a chameleon and shifting and shaping yourself because it's kind of like, tell me your first name again.
Kristy.
Kristy. If I worked for you and day in and day out, I come in wearing a What Would Kristy Do bracelet, I'm going to make decisions on what I think you would do, which isn't a bad sentiment. But I remember specifically one time they had repainted a green room at one of our campuses, thinking because the color they painted it, Andy's assistant had walked in and goes, "Oh, he's not going to like that." They completely repainted a room because she projected that he wouldn't like that. And I'm sure one time down the road, and one of the churches I work for, like I walked in, I stepped in as an interim role for a bit, and literally every answer to the questions of, now why do we do this? Well, one time blank, well, one time blank, well, one time blank. They created entire systems based on the one time. And there was a lack of trust in that. It was, well, I'm scared, right? How many of you work where you're just like, I don't want to work in fear that every decision I make is going to get the hammer dropped on me? Well, if that's you and you're shaping just because of that, you need to leave that organization. All right? Healthy leaders won't stay in an unhealthy organization. If you are healthy enough to recognize there's problems, don't let your fear of finding another job keep you from finding a job that brings life to you. Okay? So find a place where you can be yourself. The other thing is sometimes you just got to fight for that. Sometimes you got to stand up for yourself a little bit. Yeah. Sometimes you got to say, you know what? I'm with you and I'm going to do this, but I feel like I could do it better if I do it this way. So I don't know, just trying to figure out some unique ways to break down what you think they think. I mean, good grief, we live our lives thinking what they think. Yeah. But we never know what they think. We're just living in that complete uncertainty of, well, if nothing. Let's trust what we know, okay? Lean into that. What was the second part of that question?
The second part was, well, that's a good question because we have more questions on top of the question.
Well, we can move.
I got it. How do we as leaders take an objective look at ourselves?
Yeah, I think that really goes back. So anybody heard of emotional intelligence? That's, to me, if people said, where do you start with learning more about leadership? I would have you read Emotional Intelligence 2.0 or Daniel Goleman's original Emotional Intelligence article. But it all starts with this foundation of self-awareness. That's what assessments. How many of you know your Enneagram number or your, some sort of personality assessment? Anybody done a personality assessment before? Yeah, Strength Finders, you name it, whatever the thing is. That's just building an understanding of who we are. But here's the problem. So many people, especially next generation, love Enneagram. They think it's the greatest thing that's ever happened. And it's cool, but because what it's doing is unlocking some things about my personality where I go, oh yeah, that is the way I think. Oh yeah, that is the way I feel. Weird. And it resonates, right? Because so many times I'm not that person. I'm acting different. Stress takes me back to my core. So all of you, like for me, if I tell you that I've gotten more organized, sorry, every time I say it, I laugh. I've gotten more structured. Honestly, I have gotten better at that. But guess what goes out the window when stress hits? Any learned behavior. I'm going to go back to my core, my unique wiring, that specific thing. So the crazy thing is if you learn yourself, but you don't move to the second part of emotional intelligence, which is self-management, it's all for naught. So I can know myself and I can believe in myself, but if I never have behavior change because I know myself, so it's one thing to go, I'm blunt, I'm just a jerk when I talk to people. And so, I just have to apologize. Sorry, I was a jerk. Does an apology take away hurt feelings? No. The goal is to move to where I don't act a jerk to the people around me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I think that's the most practical way to kind of lean into that conversation.
That's great. All right, the next one, 10 votes. This is a popular one.
11.
Hello, coming in hot. Advice for leadership teams with very different personality and communication styles to warn together better.
I think it's work.
Work, yes.
Or worm.
Or worm.
We're going there slowly.
Yeah, we got some worms.
That's a new expression.
Raise your hand if you have a team that doesn't deal with this. Yeah, we're all different people. We all come from unique perspectives. Here's what I would encourage. So next week I go with one of my longtime clients, and I'm taking 2 teams through what I mentioned with the 5 dysfunctions. There's an assessment called the 5 behaviors where we dive into, do we trust each other? Do we actually deal with conflict? You know, et cetera, et cetera. Being intentional about the uniqueness of your group could be maybe the best thing you possibly do in leadership. Starting to learn the people and go, well, I know that, you know, Jennifer really likes to talk a lot. Well, then you need to have a conversation with Jennifer that says, hey, I love you and I'm really glad you're in this group, but you are monopolizing the time. And therefore, because I got 3 people over here who don't get to say anything because they don't naturally lean in, but I need to hear what they have to say. But because you think you've got the answers, here's one other thing, and those of you that have been in church at all, you would totally understand this. When people ask for prayer, they don't want advice.
That's big.
So when you're a chapter leader, you are responsible to facilitate that space. That's your job. And so when somebody's talking too much, that's your job. I don't care if they're communicating great or terrible. Also, listen, if you know somebody, like if I know that you guys, let's say I know that you have a specific thing you want to say, but you're not communicating it super clear. I know you well enough to try to kind of walk alongside and go, here's what I think she's trying to say. Is that fair? Right? Like lean in, trust that. Here's the funny thing. I do this when I lead creatives all the time, is most of the time when somebody that's creative has a great idea in their mind, and in the brainstorming, that idea is getting no traction. Everybody been in that before?
Yep.
What does that person usually do after that idea gets no traction? They get louder. And what they're thinking is, well, this is a great idea. I must not be clear. And we're going, no, it's a bad idea. But all of us have a hard time disconnecting our ideas from ourselves. And because the idea is not getting traction doesn't mean we don't like you. So my biggest thing is set groundwork. Just lay the foundation. Hey, to be in this circle, here's what you need to know. Here's what you can expect. We're going to be honest, but we're not going to overstep. We're going to be for each other, and we're not going to be negative towards each other. So when we started, Josh is my co-founder with the 1010 Project. We took these 14 pastors to Wyoming. Like I mentioned, it was such a terrible experience. Night 1, we set the foundation because we're in charge. We started this thing, and we looked at these guys, and we had some nice bourbon and some cigars and stuff, and we said, hey guys, there's alcohol here. Some of you do not need this, and you know who that is. We want you, though, however, because you don't have any parishioners here, I want you to have a glass of bourbon if you want a glass of bourbon. But here's what we can tell you. If either one of us see anyone getting out of line, we will call you out on that. Because this is not going to be an issue for us. But we also want it to be a good experience. Number 2, nobody in this room cares the size of your church. Because most of the time, that's how we measure things. We had other colorful language as we described that, but we are very specific to lay a foundational framework that says to be in this circle, this is what it means. And that sometimes can override the personalities and whatever. Just being super intentional up front that says, you are not going to be disrespectful, and this is how we're going to do this. I don't know if that helps that question or not, but
it does.
Thought.
Boundaries.
Yes.
Huge.
Yep.
And in friendship, expectations. I heard someone say that. Yeah, big, but boundary, and in family relationships,
Right.
like having these boundaries, super important.
Yep.
That was good.
The next question we have 12 votes for, really good. What are some ideas on helping other leaders who we lead to identify areas that they need improvement?
Yep. I think this goes back to are we making a point or making a difference? Because if I come to you and I go, hey, you're kind of not nice.
And I'd be like, that's my girlfriend. Don't talk about her like that.
I get it all the time.
I've got this
really.
thing right here. There's one way to say that you're not being nice, that you don't feel like I'm for you. There's another thing to say, can I talk to you for a sec? I noticed today, But here's the thing. So many of us have those conversations when we've never invested and created a reservoir to pull from, right? If I'm having a hard conversation with somebody in my circle, and I'm trying to get grace from an empty well, it's not going to work. It's fingernails on a chalkboard. It is a lack of understanding that I haven't spent the time. I have not earned the right to say that.
Yeah.
Right? Now, let's be clear. Some people are going to come into your chapter. They're new. You're new. Whatever. You're not new. Maybe you've been leading it for a while, but they're new. You don't have time for that yet. And if there's, it's kind of like when you take over an organization. Most of what we talked about in this morning is 90% of the time, but occasionally you take an organization that absolutely is on fire. And you have to kind of throw the playbook out the window. You got to land the plane, put the fire out, and rebuild the plane. Occasionally you're going to have a leader that comes in or someone that comes in the chapter that's a hot mess, and you just have to deal with that as it is. However, if you don't deal with it, that's on you. I'm actually working on a third book idea called Leadership Allowance. I heard this from Henry Cloud, that leadership's not just what you do, but what you allow. So if you allow stuff to happen in your chapter, although it's the other person acting the fool, you've allowed it. Guess who loses influence in that situation? Mm-hmm. You do. Yeah. So it's this kind of thing of like, I have to have a kind, heartfelt conversation to let you know you're actually losing influence in our circle because of the way you're communicating or because of this and that and the other. So I think it's just, let's create really clear expectations and then hold them to it in a loving, caring way. Because if you know that I care about you, ultimately, you know that I've put myself in an awkward position only because I care about you. And I feel like I have the right, I've earned the chips to say that. So I think it goes back to if people know I care ultimately,
yes,
then those hard conversations are going to make sense.
Yeah. Communication is so big.
Right.
Those are like great communication tools. It starts with like love and empathy, which
Yep.
sounds really simple, and sometimes it's really hard to do.
Absolutely,
You can just remember to go back to those basics.
Yep.
I think that's really good.
Well, and also the expectations is making sure that people aren't assuming what your expectations are. So as a leader, making sure that expectations are very clear.
Yep.
Because people they can't read your mind. They can't rise up to an occasion
Yep.
if they don't know what they're supposed
Yep.
to be doing. So having that established is direct line.
Well,
of
and we
success.
talked about this earlier, like extroverts win the meetings, don't they? Mm-hmm. Always. So one thing I had to learn as a leader is I've got to ask some of the people on my team that are quieter. Well, I love to just switch gears, if you can't tell. But we would go from creative to pre-production, back to creative, back to execution, whatever. And I realized I got half my team I'm leaving in the dust because I didn't give them an agenda ahead of time. Who wants that?
I do.
I don't. But you can't lead the way you want to be led, right? It's the same thing. When you're dealing with conflict, you cannot approach somebody in the way that you receive conflict best. You approach them in the way they receive conflict best. Because if you actually really believe you have something to say to them and you get lost in translation because you approached it wrong, you can be right and approach it wrong and you're not right anymore. Does that make sense? So as we're doing these things, approaching them in the way that they're going to hear it best is going to be the greatest tool to avoid the obstacles of them not even hear what you have to say because you approached it wrong, right? If somebody, like my oldest son, I don't know, middle school boys, dear goodness, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I got another year of 8th grade, and I don't even know who he is half the time, right? But he's got this little thing where he just bows up.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And he doesn't do it to me, that's for darn sure. But he, with his younger brother, you know, and his buddies all do it to each other. Like they're just like it's gross. Like they're face to face, like stop being so close. But he's taller than his brother. So he bows up to him, even if he's joking. And I'm like, dude, now if you're my kids and you don't, like leadership is like nonstop. Like when I got the contract for the first book, I was like, hey guys, I just want to hear what they thought. I said, what do you think I should write about? And my first one goes, leadership. And my youngest goes, Jesus? And I thought, that'd be a pretty good book if I wrote those two. But my point is like, his approach is wrong. And I don't care if you have the best intentions for me of what you're going to say, you bow up to me, I'm out.
You're defensive immediately.
I don't want to hear what you have to say. So anyway, that was a little extra. That was free.
We bring you the extra stuff here on the podium.
Yes. All right, this is popular as well. What are your top 3 favorite books or resources, podcasts, whatever, for leaders? Plug away.
Plug?
Plug away. Plug your books,
Oh,
of course.
I don't do that. No, I really don't. any one person that ever says, I bought your book, it blows my mind. It still blows my mind. I still don't say I'm an author. People are like, you're an author. I'm like, no, they like to write. I do this as a means to an end. I believe in this stuff. And so I just hope to get it in the hands of people that it helps. I mentioned Patrick Lencioni. That's probably one of my constant go-to people I read. Here's the thing. If you want to be a great leader and you don't have a system for learning, then it's not going to work. So like, for instance, Fast Company magazine. You can go onto fastcompany.com. They have about 16, 18 categories of articles that you could say, send me one a day in these 3 spots, and you'll get an email in your inbox with 3 articles in that area that you want to learn in. That's a system for learning, right? Leaders are learners. And so as much as I don't like to read, I try to read because I want to learn some things that help me. And you guys know this every day, like something will happen, you're like, gosh, that's a good, and you don't even realize it. And then later you're talking to your kids and you're like, man, I read this thing today, or I saw this thing today, or, I watched this 30 for 30 on ESPN and this was amazing. Like, you see what I mean? Like, your radar has to be up to learn. And so Lencioni's a great resource. They're easy to read. And a little bit lighter, but still leadership focused. John Gordon is a good friend of mine. He's written some great books. I mean, Maxwell's written over 100 books. They're all on the same topic, and I think it's the same idea, honestly, so that's amazing. I wish I could figure that out. John Maxwell is an incredible leader. And so podcast-wise, where Beth and I connected originally was through Don Miller's podcast. That's a great one. So you mentioned the Life Giving Leader podcast. We're going to combine, Josh and I are just going to do a 10-10 Project podcast. We're going to move it into that to talk about health. At the end of the day, our heartbeat is going, we got to keep guys in the game. Yeah. And we keep losing too many of our friends, whether it's to suicide or other things. And so we're just trying to give our next 20 years to that. So that's a few ideas. But my biggest thing is just leaders are learners. So figure out some people you like to listen to, people you like to read, and grab a hold of those things.
Mm-hmm. And I want to plug you. I love social media, and I want you to be able to plug yourself. Can you give these ladies your handles of where they can follow you on Facebook, Instagram, etc.?
Yep, it's @reallystronglead. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Like really, really strong.
Great looking. No, that's not it either. @Tyler Reagin, Reagin on all social medias. That's the easiest way to keep up.
Yeah. Do we have time for one more question?
We got 2:30.
We got time. Perfect. So, last questions. This one has a lot of votes also.
I love how much that's meant to us.
It does mean a lot because, people are engaged. They're voting these things up, and the ones that are going to the top are the ones that get asked. So it's really important that everybody that's virtual and in audience really participate and vote up these questions we can make the time for what we all want to hear. I'll shut up. Self-awareness is a huge aspect of leadership. What are 2 ways to improve our own self-awareness?
Great. So what I mentioned before, go take an assessment. Enneagram's an easy one. You can do it online. It's ENNEAGRAM. Or take Strength Finders. Buy the, what's the book called? It's like, you can look it up. Strength Finders, the assessment's easy. There's 3 or 4 assessments you can do for free online, and just take them. Here's the thing I would encourage you. If you have a team or you work in an organization somewhere that everybody takes their own and they just talk about it, that's not helpful. When you take an assessment through someone who's trained in that assessment, it actually moves you further faster. And so try to figure out a way to read a little bit more on it. My friend Ian Cron is kind of an expert. He's kind of become a Enneagram machine. So he's got a book out there. I think it's The Path Back to You or something like that. But Ian Morgan Cron is probably a great read because he will walk you through the whole Enneagram as an understanding. So
there are also great Enneagram Instagrams to follow.
Yeah, that's true.
I have a question.
Yep.
What is your Enneagram number?
Everybody, including my friend Bob Goff, used to say if I'm not a 7, then the test is wrong. Because a 7 is like the most fun. They're yellow. Everything is fun and it's a party. I'm actually a 2, which is a helper profile. So my right path profile is I'm an encourager. And so what I love about that is without any details, that gives you a little bit of understanding of my natural wiring, doesn't it? Do you think I'm going to choose results or relationship first? Right? So if you are an analyzer on the right path, what do you think? Results or relationship? Results. Neither one are wrong. It's just an understanding of how you're wired. So that's why that assessment and those types of things help you with your self-awareness.
And what I found when I started looking up Enneagram is like when you go to stress, I found out when I go to stress that I just don't make any decisions.
Yep.
I'm a 3. So
Yep.
I just stop making decisions, like freeze. Which helps me, which is true, but it
Yep.
helps me figure out how to deal
That's right,
with that.
because you know that's going to be your tendency.
Yes.
So now I've got to go, okay, how do I overcome that tendency
Yes.
so that I can actually be a decent citizen of society?
That's important.
That was a very big stretch of mine.
Wow.
Like, just kidding. 3s and 8s tend to go take you out and get it done. So stand by.
I hate telling people I'm a 3 because it's the achiever.
Okay, now see
Who
right
else
now,
in here
can we
has
have
never done this?
Can we have a second?
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great.
So all of us out here are like,
What are we talking about?
what are we?
Here's all I want to say.
Wow, we're
Yeah,
missing
okay.
out on so much
I'm going to
here.
say this because this is going to close us out.
Yeah.
For years, I hated saying I'm an unstructured leader because the world loves structured people.
Mm-hmm.
And then my heart changed towards that, going, I'm good at what I'm good at. And my team, if I fight really hard, if I'm a 3, like, no, I'm a 3, dang it.
Yeah.
I'm a 7, I'm whatever. You pick your thing, pick your poison, if you will.
Own
But
it.
like, be yourself. Do not ever be ashamed of that unique wiring because that will completely show up in your leadership.
That's a good word.
So,
Well, we are out of time, but I wrote down one of my favorite quotes that you mentioned today, and I want to just leave it out there. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You guys, give it up for Tyler.
thank you.
You guys ready for an adventure? Our next guest
Love it.
is the absolute epitome of an adventurer. This woman is tough as nails.
She is a critically acclaimed author, successful entrepreneur who is able to translate her experiences into a path that allows people to better navigate their work and their world.
Today, she's going to share with us lessons and challenges of solo hiking the Appalachian Trail. And then she went back, get this, after she did that solo, to set a world record on the famed footpath. So this woman is unbelievable.
Going through her story, she highlights how to create a supportive team atmosphere that is ready and willing to achieve a common goal. And she is a local here to Asheville, so if you guys are out exploring and you have any questions in regards to that, she is your woman. Without further ado, please give a round of applause for Jennifer Pharr Davis. That was amazing. Thank you. We all needed to hear that. The world needs to hear that.
The first question, you had made mention of a friend of yours, and the ladies of the Well-Armed Woman want to know, is there any way that us as an organization could help your friend, the woman who is a victim of domestic violence?
That I really appreciate that. I was honestly like, should I invite her even to this conference? Like, is it too fresh? But I would love to put her in touch with a local chapter. You know, I will say if anyone heard that story and just felt like it personally really resonated and they have advice, they've been down the same path, they want to share it, if you do have time to write a note to this woman and give it to Beth, then I'll give her that. And I think that would mean a lot.
That's the one thing about this group. We are sisters and we stick together. And if someone has experienced it, we all gain strength from our individual experiences. And that's why you're here, because you have accomplished something that none of us have done, and your experience brings us strength, and so that's what we're here for, so we'd love to do that for your friend.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, the next one. How do you keep yourself safe on the trail?
You know, it's funny. I think ideas of safety shift with new environments, and a lot of what's said here really resonates for me, but when I started hiking, I felt unsafe on the trail because it was a new environment. Now, now, I feel much safer outdoors than I do in any major city or driving down the road. So I don't think that outdoors is a naturally unsafe environment. That said, you know, you certainly do have to be aware of people. There have been a handful in all my 14,000 miles of trail that have made me a little uncomfortable. If anything, hiking has restored my faith in humanity. People look out for each other on the trail. I also, in the beginning, was really worried about things like bears and snakes. I've seen so many bears and snakes, and they have never once tried to attack me. In fact, yesterday, I don't know if I should tell you this about Asheville, but we have a real urban bear problem. If you want to see a bear in Asheville, don't go hiking. Just walk around the neighborhoods in Asheville. I see one about every week. So I was jogging through my neighborhood yesterday afternoon, and houses everywhere, 2 miles from downtown, and I went within 10 feet of a bear. Still, the bear wanted nothing. You know, he was digging through trash. He didn't care. But now the things I worry about most on trail are unfriendly dogs off leash and ticks. That's what I've had the most trouble or have heard of the most trouble with. And it's interesting even hearing you all talk about raising your voice and establishing your presence, because whether it's an unfriendly dog off leash or a black bear, the thing you're supposed to do is get big. And when a dog chases after me, and I've done a lot of trails now that aren't even trails, you're road walking, you're going through these rural areas. So dogs will run after you, and I've learned to yell back. When I cowered and kept going, they kept following me. And when I learned to stand tall and say, stay, go home, get back. It's amazing the difference, and it either stops the dog or lets someone inside know that their dog's chasing me.
I think that's a typical predator response. In human predators, everything that we have learned, the same thing goes with a human predator. It applies to wildlife. Being in command,
Yes.
being dominant, not giving up goes a long ways. And you fight. If it if the yelling doesn't stop, you fight.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
fight until there's no breath left in your body. You fight. And that goes with everything.
I agree.
And
Except a grizzly, but yes.
well, grizzly bears will eat you.
Play dead.
So the ladies want to know what you're using for self-defense. Are you bringing pepper spray? Or what are you doing? Do you have a big knife that you wield that we don't know about or something?
Yeah, backpacking is it's a little tricky. I mean, my best weapon if I'm out there, especially in grizzly country, is grizzly spray. But you have hiking poles, so your hands are in straps around poles, and that's what you're using. So I typically don't take a firearm with me. I don't take a firearm with me when I hike or camp. I've always said if that's something that makes you feel safe and gives you access to this sport or this activity, then by all means. But I grew up more traditional in a family of outdoorsmen where hunting was the thing. So much more familiar with rifles and shotguns and handguns.
The ladies want to know, what is your hiker name?
Oh, okay, that's fun. When you do these long trails, part of the community aspect is everyone takes nicknames or trail names. And I'm tall, I'm 6 feet tall. So when I got out there, all these other hikers were trying to give me a nickname. And I got suggestions like Sasquatch.
Oh, no.
And Stretch and Amazon, and all the old wounds from middle school were ripped open.
Oh.
So I didn't take one of those, but I was comparing the trail to Homer's Odyssey, and someone said, you should be Odysseus, which I love that because it's this historical adventure, but there were so many guys out there already, I didn't want to be another dude, so we changed Odysseus to Odyssa. And that has been my trail name ever since, and that's part of the title of my first book is Becoming Odyssa.
Yeah, that's a great story. So we're learning right now that our body is capable of much more if we have a strong mindset. How do you train mentally for endurance adventures?
Well, I think even, again, a lot of what you've said at this conference in the panel earlier is you have to practice and you have to see yourself there and make it a reality for yourself as you prepare. So when I'm preparing for an adventure, I research, I try to find people who have done it before, ask them questions, and I try to like mentally see myself there and physically replicate the experience as much as possible, because that brings you confidence when you're in those then unknown areas. So visualization and research and practice, I think, are key.
Wow, it's so synchronistic.
It is.
Yeah,
It really
it's
is. I've been at the gun conference being like, like, me too.
Yes, there is a reason you are here.
Yeah.
You all relate. All right, someone wants to know, have you ever heard of the book, Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder? And how do you find ways to bring your 4-year-old to love nature like you do?
Oh, it's not the 4-year-old, it's the 8-year-old. And gummy bears is the answer.
M&Ms.
She bribes her children like the rest of us.
Bribery and peer pressure are amazing tools to get kids outdoors. So that is a great book by Richard Louv. It's one of my favorites. He has several others. The most recent I like even more. It's called Our Wild Calling, and it talks about our connection with animals, both domestic, pets, and wild animals. It's very good. So if you're interested in how we as humans operate with the natural world, Richard Louv is a wonderful author to check out.
There's so many women that want to get outside of their comfort zones, but there's a lot of intimidation to doing that. What step would you suggest that women take, and how can we help lead women to be willing to take those first steps, whether it's getting outside or picking up a firearm for the first time?
Yeah, so I really appreciated it again in the panel. I think having a female instructor makes a huge difference. We have had a guiding company locally for 13 years, and it's always been part of our philosophy that over half of our guides are going to be women. And, you know, whether it's talking about their cycle or menopause or female issues on the trail or just not wanting to go out with Bear Grylls, like there is something about being with someone who you can relate to and connect to. And so what I always say with women who want to get outdoors is like, you just have to invite your friends. Like so many people want to do it or are curious or are willing to go, but they're not going to do it unless someone asks them. And I think it's the same thing here. Like, I would love to go shoot like firearms with my friends. Like I would do it in a heartbeat, but because like I have a busy life and I love hiking and that's where my time goes, unless a girlfriend asks me to go, I'm probably not going to carve out the time to do it. So really inviting people to your chapters does make a huge difference.
Got some fun questions here. What supplies do you have with you when you are hiking solo?
The more I backpack, I will say the less different my day pack looks from my overnight pack, because I do like to be prepared, and I'm trained in wilderness medicine, and I want to be able to help other people on the trail too. So I am a lightweight backpacker, but I have a stout first aid kit I always take with me. I always take emergency shelter and usually a couple warm layers, even in the summer, because if something happens and you're out there at night, you need those supplies. And then a lot of snacks.
What's your favorite snack? I'm just curious. Sorry.
Well, I hate energy bars because I've eaten like 5 million of them. So, yeah, I try not to eat too many bars anymore, but my current snack I like on the trail is I always take some dried fruit. I've been taking dates and putting it with like sharp cheese or Parmesan that stays pretty good on the trail, and then wrapping that with pre-cooked bacon.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's my kind of lady.
Yes, it's delicious.
That's my trail snack.
Yeah.
Now I might consider hiking.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
They want to know, have you ever considered hiking Everest?
I don't think I've considered it because people in my, my community do things like that. I am not a mountaineer. I'm not a touch the top type of person. Like I love to hike around mountains. I love to see how far I can go. I also don't like being cold, and I like breathing. So
yeah, that's important.
Well, because if you decided you were doing that, you would do it. I mean, there's like, you're either I'm all in or all out. I can tell by your personality, and I don't know if I'd want to touch the top of that one either.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Pass.
Yeah. So how long did it take you start to finish? Our audience would like to know.
I always forget this. So my husband and I finished the trail. I mean, he helped me along the way, but it was definitely a team effort. So we together got to the end in 46 days. That's an average of 47 miles a day, and we did actually, in fact, break the record. It has since been broken, but it was the first time that a woman had set the overall mark on one of these long trails in North America, which again, people didn't think that was going to happen. And now what you see, it takes one person, but other women have overall records now. And more women are getting involved in the outdoors and trail records. So sometimes it just takes one person.
I have a question. When you're setting these records, is there someone that, like, an outside person that keeps track or follows you, or like, how do they trust?
It's getting more formalized, and I don't like it. It's getting more regulated, and there's more sponsorship and social media, and I'm all kind of like, because when I did it, we didn't even have smartphones. We were using gazetteer maps. It was based on the honor system. It felt like sport for sport's sake, if that makes sense. Like, it really felt like it doesn't matter who sees this and who recognizes this. This is really personally very important and motivated, and now it feels a lot more external as the sport's grown. But yeah, there's a lot of now like etiquette or guidelines, and most people carry trackers with them, but it's a still quirky, weird underground sport, and it's changed a lot over the past 10, 15 years.
You have breadcrumb trails in these GPS navigation systems that will literally update your family as frequently as you want, depending on the type of battery life you want for your adventure. So you can do it like every 10 minutes, every hour, every 10 hours, and then it will just breadcrumbs so your family can follow you on their computer screen with the 3D imagery at home. It's crazy.
It's crazy. That also drives anxiety. I'm just going to tell you, because technology does fail us too. So more often than not,
good point.
You know, we have people who are tracking our company hikes or their friends on long trails, and I get calls all the time. It's like, they went dark. Like, when do we call search and rescue? And I'm like, hold on. Like, batteries go out, technology fails. Like, let's just give them a little bit of time to check in. And they've always been okay in that situation.
So fitness obviously is such an important aspect of what you do. And do you have a specific routine for your time in between your adventures and your prepping for your next hike? I mean, is there something that like really is impactful to your performance?
No.
Morgan, you don't even have to start. Just go hike that trail right now. You don't need to train. Just go.
When I was training for the record, it was a time in my life when I was close to an elite athlete. My day-to-day routine now is I have 2 small businesses and 2 small kids and 2 goats, right? So my schedule is very full, and I just try to fit in what I can. And I don't feel guilty when I go days or a week or more without exercising. If I have a few minutes in the day, I stretch. That's a go-to, partly because I'm getting older and it feels good to stretch, and partly because it's just something easy and quick I can do. When I have more time, I do love exercising. I love being outdoors, so it's easy for me to gravitate towards that if the opportunity arises, but I am not on a crazy workout routine. I walk with my girlfriends a lot. I do. We call it mom walks, and we'll go before work or on weekends, and that's a big part of my fitness routine.
So are you doing weight-bearing exercise at all? I'm just curious.
I lifted 600 pounds of sandbags yesterday for my goats. That felt weight-bearing, right?
Well, I mean, there's so many. So, I mean, coming from a hunting and adventure-seeking background, there's so many people, and I have a fitness background also. It's like, okay, you need to do so much weightlifting, and you need to do, dynamic training and some endurance training and cycling up in miles or cycling down. I mean, there's all these philosophies, and like I'm talking to this woman who's like, yeah, I hike with my mom group, and
I do.
I just go crush it. I'm like, I'm blown away.
So
amazing.
My diet and my workout routine, when people ask me about it, I usually sum it up in one word, and it's gratitude. I know on the trail, when it comes to diet, I've been really hungry. Like, I've pulled a bagel out of a trash can and eaten it. Like, I know what it is to be really hungry, so if there's food in front of me, I'm grateful. And then, yes, sometimes if there's lots of food, I'll make choices based off my preferences or health choices. But in general, I'm grateful to have food. And it's the same with exercise. Like, I'm so grateful to use my body. And our bodies are a gift. And someday, all I have to do is stretch and touch my toes and take a few deep breaths. And then some days I get to walk with a girlfriend, and some days I get to climb a mountain. And no matter what it is, I am grateful.
I love that. That's the one thing we can't buy is our health, and our body is our temple, and I appreciate that perspective.
I do want to highlight, she did say she started out as an elite athlete before doing this.
Yeah.
Pressure off, Morgan.
That's important to note. Because it takes a lot to get there. So we have a little bit of time with you. How can all these ladies find you on social media and on the web?
Jennifer Pharr Davis is my name. That's how it is on Facebook. Instagram is Jen, Jen, Pharr, Pharr, Davis. Love to be helpful, be a resource to y'all if you're looking to get outdoors and have that experience. And then if you want to talk, we have a break coming next, and I do have a booth with books available for purchase, and I'm happy. Even if you don't want a book, but you want to just come talk or ask questions, I'd love to visit with you in that way as well.
Awesome. Y'all give it up for Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you for listening to the Wild and Uncut podcast. If you would like to hear more, be sure to subscribe to my Pursue the Wild digital series on YouTube and follow me at Kristy Titus on Facebook and Instagram.